Mistakes are inevitable and we need to know how to deal with them. Let me tell you about myself. So I'm trying to eat healthy, like recently, a lot more recently in my life. So I usually eat the same thing for breakfast every day, or at least I try to. I try to eat oatmeal every day for breakfast. And that's because it's good for running. It gives you energy for running or endurance sports. Most people eat oatmeal for endurance sports. And then for lunch, I usually eat chicken and rice, right? I try to eat that every day usually, but on the weekends I slip up. But for my dinner, I always slip up, like every day. Like, let me show you what I had for dinner the other day. That's all Reese's. That's all Reese's, okay? But okay, that was like a couple months ago. That's not me now. That was a couple months ago. But the thing is, it's important to admit your mistakes and move on from them. If you don't identify your mistakes, if you don't admit your faults, if you don't acknowledge that you are not perfect, then you will never move forward in life truly. You will never be able to gain new wisdom. Wisdom is brought on through mistakes. Or more importantly, wisdom is brought on through wisdom is brought on through books. You could get wisdom through books. You don't even have to make mistakes. You could just read a book and gain wisdom from that. You're learning from other people's mistakes. That's why books are important. It saves you time and mistakes. You don't have to make as many mistakes if you read a book. That's why I tell people you got to start reading and stuff. But that's besides the point. Mistakes need to be made in order for like the important decisions. Like I was talking about this the other day with my friends. Like, let's say that you completely take away your son's video games. Let's say that you stash them away in the cupboard for the next 10 years that you have him as your son, okay? Not because he's gonna die or anything, but because he's gonna move out eventually. He's gonna move out unless your son is just some loser. If you take away these video games from your son, sure you're gonna get good results now. Your son's not gonna spend any amount of time on video games. He's not gonna waste his time. Yeah, sure. Maybe that's a plus. Maybe that's a plus. But I think a much more effective strategy is to let your son play video games in the first place, okay? Not because I'm saying, oh, video games are good for you, hand-eye coordination. Nah, that's all BS. If you let your son play video games now, okay, and then he eventually realizes, wow, I've been wasting my time on video games, that will be much more effective for him. Because if you just take away those video games in the first place and never let him use them, he as soon as he moves out the house, he's buying every video game he wants. He's gonna spend all of his free time on video games because you didn't let him. You didn't let him make the mistake now. You didn't let him realize that, oh, I'm wasting my time. I don't have enough time to study. You didn't let him realize that, oh, video games aren't even a fun thing to do in the first place. You didn't let your son realize that because you robbed him of the experience. You robbed him of the mistake. That's why my plan as a parent, when I get my kids, I want to tell my son or my daughter, either or, I want to tell my kids that I think that video games are a waste of time for you and that you will never get your time back. Okay, I'll tell my son all the disadvantages of playing video games, okay? But I'll let them play video games. If they want video games, I'll buy it for them. I'll let them because it's not going to help them if I tell them my advice. Sure, I could guide them through life, but if I force them, they will never truly be successful. They will never truly be on that plane of understanding as me. Like my son might not play video games, and I might know the effects of not playing video games, and I don't. But if my son just doesn't play video games but he wants to, then there's really no net positive. There's no good thing that comes out of that because your son's just gonna play them as soon as he moves out of the house. You're gonna explode. Your son's gonna explode. Basically, he's gonna explode. Most people, they like to avoid their mistakes. They like to avoid the past. Most people go and live by the quote, the past is nothing, forget about the past. Do you really believe that? Do you really think that if we don't understand our past, we can look to the future? Think about that. If you don't understand your past, how are you going to go to the future? How are you going to navigate the future? If you don't know who you really are and what you did in the past, what you could have done better, you will not know how to go to the future. You will not know how to approach the future. In today's society, especially, our parents, which is a good thing, honestly, our parents are encouraging us to be the best we could be, to set big goals and reach those goals. They almost force us subconsciously in a way to achieve the things that we don't really want to achieve. Like, you don't really want to be the best student in your class. You just want that approval from your parents. You want that validation. Most people can relate to this. That's why the people who usually tend to be more successful and happy at the same time are the people who want to be the best in their grade anyway. The people who genuinely want to. The people who didn't really even have parents who said, okay, go do that. Go try to be valedictorian. Study 6 hours a day and maybe you'll get this position. Study to make me proud. The most successful people don't really have those types of parents. They didn't listen to their parents because they wanted to be successful. They listened to themselves because they wanted to be successful. That's where the true success comes from. If you listen to your parents, you will not care about your mistakes in the first place. You will not care enough to learn about your mistakes. You will not care to find out how you could do something better. If you're a student who actually wants to be the best student in your class and you genuinely want that, and it's not like any external influences that are influencing you, you just want to be the best student in your class, you will find a way in your mind, like, how can I do this thing better? How can I save more time when studying? How can I raise my grade? Should I go talk to my teacher after class? But as I was saying earlier in this video, I talked about how most people, they try to shy away from their mistakes. They don't want to understand their mistakes. Like, some people, they might have done something super embarrassing a long time ago, and now you don't want to think about it at all. And sure, that's fine on you. Fair to you. You don't want to think about that time where you start crying in your graduation, your elementary graduation. You start crying for no reason. You don't want to think about that. You don't want to think about all the embarrassing moments in your life. But it's important that you do it at least once. Think about that mistake once. Pull out a journal or something and start writing about that mistake and how you could do better next time. What you learned from that mistake. Do it at least once. Preferably as soon as you make that mistake, write it in your journal and talk about it. Never shy away from your mistakes. That characterizes you subconsciously. That will characterize you to be a more, what do you call someone who like doesn't approach their issues? Someone who, that not addressing your mistakes will characterize you to be someone who doesn't go directly to your issues. Yeah, those are the words. I'm sure there's words that describe this type of person, but those are the words I would use. Not addressing your mistakes characterizes you as someone who doesn't want to look at their mistakes. It characterizes you as someone who looks around the bush, looks around, makes excuses. You're going to subconsciously be affected that way if you don't address your mistakes, if you don't address your problems, if you don't create new solutions. That's why it's important to have the humility, the humbleness to admit your mistakes in the first place and move on from them. I think we should all have this goal for the future, and this goal should be to become more humble. Become more humble. Everyone would benefit from becoming more humble. Me especially, I'm working on that too, becoming more humble. My name is Faaris, and I hope you make more mistakes. Think big.